Hi everyone and welcome back to the FPL Family YouTube channel. It is Jammy Pick time. So for those of you that have never watched a Jammy Pick video before, Jammy Picks are differentials owned by under 5% of the game. These are the players that could massively improve your overall rank. These are the ones that will help you climb those mini leagues if you invest in them at the right moment. So every week I take a look at the fixtures, I take a look at the underlying stats for some of the players, well for all of the players that are under 5% owned, and come up with 4 potential Jammy picks. So 4 players that I think could do well this upcoming game week, and then pick one of them to be my overall Jammy pick. Now for the last couple of weeks, the Jammy picks have actually been paying off and they've been returning relatively well. We had a couple this week who returned. So my overall Jammy pick for last week was Ollie Watkins. I was expecting some new manager bounce from him up at Aston Villa, now under Steven Gerrard, and he did just that, scoring a goal, registering 8 points. Very nice. So if you did go with Watkins last week, that was a very good decision, and I think he could be also a nice pick going into this weekend too. One of the other players that was on the list of potential Jammy picks for last week was Christian Benteke, who got a brace in game week 12. If only I'd invested in the Crystal Palace front man. 12 points from him last time around, so he was a fantastic Jammy pick last time out. The other two actually were slightly unlucky, maybe not to get some returns. So it was Emerson Royale for Spurs, who was actually top for tackles across the game week with 9. 7 of those were successful, and also at Marcus Rashford at Manchester United, who had, well, Manchester United had a terrible game, didn't they, against Watford, but Rashford was 7th for XG underachievers in that game, meaning that potentially he should have done better than he did. But I will absolutely take the Benteke and Watkins picks from last time. Now, this week, going into game week 13, obviously I am recording this in the middle of Champions League action, so I have tried to pick out players who won't be too affected. However, there are a couple of players in the Jammy picks this week who will be affected potentially if they play for their clubs in the Champions League and indeed in the UEFA Conference on Thursday evening too. So let's have a little look at them. So this week's potential Jammy picks are at the bottom of the screen there. So we have Josh King from Watford, we have Lucas Moura from Spurs, we have Matty Targett from Aston Villa, and Sadio Mane makes another appearance in the Jammy pick videos for Liverpool in game week 13. So let's start then with Josh King, as he is first in the list there. He's going to cost you 5.6 million, and he is owned currently by 4.1% of the game. He's not quite the most highly owned of this, but he is second for the most highly owned of my 4 Jammy picks. Got 6 points in game week 12, actually played really well, I thought, against Manchester United, and now has returns in 2 of the last 4 game weeks. He has been pretty much never present since Ranieri arrived, and that's a really positive thing when you're looking for a cheap forward option. We are starting to see some problems with that forward line in terms of who is performing and when they are performing. So going for somebody like Josh King, only going to cost you 5.6 million, is a nice cheap enabler. And we have a little look at his opposition for this week. It is indeed Leicester City. Leicester City, well, they've been pretty awful, haven't they, of late? They haven't kept a clean sheet since game week 1. And when we have a little look at Josh King's record against the Foxes, he has returned in 2 of the last 4 meetings that he has had against them in the Premier League. And in that time, returned 11 and 8 points. If you look at him in total over his whole Premier League career against Leicester, including when he was obviously at Bournemouth and also again with Everton last time around, he returns on average 4.14 points per game. So it's not a huge return, but I do think with the way that Watford are, well, they've massively improved, haven't they, since Ranieri arrived? They have been on a new manager bounce, and they will take huge confidence, you would expect, from what happened against Manchester United in game week 12. And Leicester are really struggling right now. They aren't in a very good place, and I suspect Josh King might just get the better of them. So he is my first potential option as a Jammy pick this weekend. Then we come to the lovely Lucas Moura, one of my favourite Spurs players. Lucas Moura is the sort of player that will give you 100% effort regardless of how bad the rest of the team are playing. So I really like Lucas Moura. He's owned by just 1% of the game, so he is a massive differential, and returned 5 points in game week 12, as a result of his assist. So that was really positive if you'd already gone as an early investor in Lucas Moura. He's going to cost you 6.4 million, so significantly cheaper Then if you want to invest in the Spurs front line elsewhere, you haven't got a budget for the likes of Son, who's over 10, I think he's 10.4 now, and Kane, who's 12.2, I think now. So obviously a lot cheaper to go with Moura over one of those two. He got 8 points in the last fixture against Burnley in the Premier League in the 2021 season. And actually, since Conte arrived, he's managed 70 and 87 minutes in the Premier League. So seems to be well liked. And I think that's because you do get a huge work ethic from Lucas Moura. He is the sort of player that I think Conte will get on well with, because he will work hard and he does listen. Burnley, like Leicester before, have only kept one clean sheet so far this season, and that was against Norwich. So I am expecting Spurs to go away to Burnley and score goals. And I do think that front three started to come together again in game week 12. Not in the first half where they were dreadful, but in the second half they were significantly better. So I do think Lucas Moura and Son and Kane are good picks for this weekend. Obviously, the other two owned by over 5% of the game, but Lucas Moura, a nice differential, just 1% owning him. Next to him then we have Matt Targett from Aston Villa. He is currently owned by 2.2% of the game and is going to cost you a nice cheap budget enabling 4.7 million now. Obviously he is a defender coming up against Crystal Palace, who are scoring a lot of goals at the moment, but I haven't necessarily picked him for his defensive capabilities. Got 7 points in game week 12 and was fourth for crosses in game week 12 with 6. 4 of those were successful. He was also third for tackles, 7 of those done, all of them successful. Now, all of those underlying stats help you in terms of bonus points. So if a clean sheet does stick, that's going to help him. But also, he's putting in a number of crosses. Those crosses, when you've got the likes of Watkins in the box, are potentially going to get you some attacking returns too. So I do think there is potential here. Plus, we have the new manager bounce under Steven Gerrard. And we saw what Gerrard likes to do in terms of wing backs. We started to see that, didn't we, in game week 12. So I think Matt Targett could be a good option for this week. But also, likewise with Lucas Moura and Josh King, obviously, they could be good longer term picks as well. The fixtures are nice for Spurs. Josh King's a really nice cheap enabler. Actually, so is Lucas Moura when you're talking about cheap budget finds. All three of these really nice options. Next to them, however, we have somebody who is not a nice cheap budget option by any stretch of the imagination. Sadio Mane is going to cost you 12 million. And at the beginning of the season, we all spoke about how we weren't going with Mane because you couldn't budget for him. It was too difficult, particularly when you've got the likes of Salah in the form that Salah is in. Mane is only owned by 4.6% of the game, so he is the most heavily owned of my Jammy Picks here. But he's such good differential. So he has returned in 4 of the last 6 game weeks. He is second for both influence and threat across midfielders in the ICT index. Of course, that's only behind Salah, which is part of why he is so lowly owned. He has real potential upside here. I said in my video that I did with Lee on Monday, I wasn't really rating Mane at the moment, and I still don't. I still don't think he's playing particularly well. I still think he's being really wasteful. But what he does do really nicely is stay in the box and poach goals. So there is massive potential there. And of course, when you're sitting that high in the ICT index for both influence and threat, there's going to be potential there for you to return. He's also second overall across the ICT index, only behind Salah again. Now, it's a slight risk because, of course, like with Lucas Moura with the conference this week, Mane does play or potentially is going to play in the Champions League. However, I think it's a risk worth taking because, well, Liverpool have already won. They're already qualified in the Champions League, so maybe we won't see a full-strength Liverpool team on Wednesday evening, but let's see what happens there. His record against Southampton is also really good. In the last 3 matches that he has played against Southampton in the Premier League, he has returned 2 double-digit hauls, and I was at St Mary's for one of those double-digit hauls, and it was very impressive. So I think Sadio Mane could be a really nice pick this week. So those are my 4 potential Jammy Pick options this week. All 4 of them, I think, likely to return. So Josh King, Lucas Moura, Matt Targett, and Sadio Mane. But overall, my Jammy Pick this week is going to be Sadio Mane. I do think that the way that Liverpool are playing, the confidence that they are playing with, and even with how wasteful and annoying I have found Mane over the last few weeks, he is still returning points. And that is really what you want in FPL. So if you are looking for a differential, if you are trying to make changes in your team and make it a bit more exciting, boost you up that overall rank, then maybe going with Mane is a good option. It's just how you budget for a £12 million midfielder when you are already invested likely in Salah next to him. So those are my Jammy Pick potentials for this week. What do you think? Who's your best Jammy Pick shout for game week 13? Leave me a note in the comments below. Let me know who you think is a good Jammy Pick for this time around. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button. I will be back later on this week with a top points pick video ahead of game week 13. And then back with Lee on Sunday for our usual live stream. Thanks, guys.